Welcome to Blending the Family, the podcast. Topics can range from dads hitting rock bottom, daughters watching their parents divorce, or even what is a good wine for couples to have while talking about finances. Here's your host, whose bleeding ulcer bleeds Chicago Cub Blue, Tommy Maloney. Holy cow!
And ironically, I am sitting here wearing my Chicago Bear hat as we get close to the playoffs. Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to this podcast known as Blending the Family. I am your hostess with the mostest. 2018, bye-bye. To a lot of us, we're saying it's a shitty year, but before, hold on. Amy Lyle is back on this program. We're going to talk about how to make not just 2019 or any new year a better year. We're going to talk about ways how failure can help you and how to improve your life. But hold on, let me take a step back. I know our world, our United States is in a little bit of turmoil. But here's the thing, and you might have heard me say this before with other guests. I say this to my grandmother, Helen, who I dearly love. I love my grandmother, Helen. But there's something called, and I got this from Darren Hardy, who's written some great books. Matter of fact, in my pile of, I have the home office is in turmoil right now because we're using it as a storing ground for Christmas gifts. But anyway, Darren Hardy, one of the best programs I have that I bought was called Living Your Best Year Ever. Highly recommend that. He also wrote The Entrepreneur Roller Coaster. Hey, I'm Tommy. I'm 5. Roller Coaster. Entrepreneur Roller Coaster. So anyway, check out Darren Hardy. But what Darren Hardy taught me was there's something called the world and your world. So when things don't go the world's way, so elections, for example, that's the world. And you shouldn't worry about that. You should be more concerned with your world, your family. So your family would be an example there. You know, in our household, you might have heard me talk about our family dog Duke, who is he's still around, and amazingly he's still around. He's old. He's 15, over 15 years. Well, he's getting close to 16. Anyway, that affects me. Our family dog affects me. Does our family dog affect you? Maybe not. Because that doesn't pertain to your world, okay? I hope this makes sense. Anyway, I am grateful, and we're going to talk about gratitude with Amy Lyle, but I am so grateful that you've stuck around. I know, and you heard me on the previous little recap of 2018 where I talk about I've had some gaps, but we're going. That's all going to change. So let's talk about Amy Lyle. Amy Lyle, where's her book? Her first book is right here. Book of Failures. Book of Failures was her first book. She has a new book out called We're All a Mess on Amazon. Get it. The links will be in the show notes. But I saw this years ago. Larry King had Tony Robbins on, and Tony Robbins was talking about goal setting and how to have a new great year and things like that. But I'm going to call bullshit, and here's why. Just because it's a new year doesn't always mean you get a clean slate, okay? We still have to pay our bills. We still have to go to a job. It could be a job we hate. Man, I am having problems talking. It's been a while, I guess. Jobs we dread. Maybe we're in a relationship we don't like or even love. So just because it's a new year doesn't necessarily mean it's like in the movie "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" With George Clooney, and yes, you might have read my LinkedIn thing about how I wrote about I have a bro crush on George Clooney. He's so dreamy. But in the movie, Oh Brother Where Art Thou, the guys go and they get baptized, and yes, if you're a Christian, you get it, you understand. Jesus died on the cross for our sins. We're sinners. Yada yada yada. So here's what I want to say about this new year, clean slate BS. What I would recommend you do is understand that life is great. If you're hearing this, life is great. It's a day above ground. I drive people nuts because I say that constantly. Yes, I'll take a step back and say, is it always great? Fuck no. Okay? However, what I want to say is, you control your destiny. Okay? You control your life. At the same time, in order for you to succeed, you can't just sit there and just wait for it to happen. You have to create it. So again, my point of, yes, a new year, yes, things can be different, but at the same time, it's up to you to control that. It's up to you to take that step back and go, you know what? These past 12 months have been crappy. Or let's flip it. These 12 months have been awesome. How do I keep that momentum going? Okay? Anyway, Amy Lyle. She is a writer. She is a actress. She is hilarious. She is just somebody I wanted to have to really represent going into a new year, talking about how can we take some of our failures and how do we take them and learn at the same time. I hope that makes sense. So anyway, on the podcast with Amy Lyle, we're going to talk about mentorship, creating your map, accepting the word no, okay? Even you using the word no and actually hearing the word no. Small steps, and finally, a theme among themes of guests you'll hear in the new year. We're going to talk a lot about gratitude, okay? A lot about gratitude, okay? So let me just say, I am grateful you stuck with me. I am grateful you are listening to this podcast. And also, you can watch the interview I do with Amy on our YouTube channel, okay? So it's Blending the Family on YouTube. You'll see my ugly mug. I think with Amy, I'm wearing a Santa hat because when we recorded, it's right before Christmas. Therefore, I'm wearing a Santa hat. Plus, it was an early morning interview. I hadn't taken a shower yet. Yeah, there's a visual for you. I know, a little TMI. But anyway, there you go. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy this. Please go to Amy Lyle's website, which you'll find in the show notes, and go to Amazon, buy her books, and that's it. You know what I'm going to say next is Terry Crews, my favorite, bestest friend. One day he will be my bestest friend. He just doesn't know it. Your success is my success.
Okay, I propped it up.
Okay. All right. Well, we're recording anyway, so.
Oh my goodness. I do have a book of failures, so fiascos ensuing is just part of my shtick, right?
Right.
Yeah.
The second, so was this the first book?
Yes, that's my first book. I wrote that I released that in May of 2016. And every Friday I had a hashtag Friday fail on social media, Twitter and Facebook and whatever. And so I would put one of my failures and people would reply with some of their failures. And the failures were so funny that I started asking permission if I could use them. And I just started cutting and pasting. And sometimes they would tell me the story. Of course, I kind of massage the story and, rewrite it a little bit or whatever. And before you knew it, I had 60,000 words.
Oh my
And
god.
so I wrote another book that's called We're All a Mess. It's Okay.
So that one's out though, right?
Yes, that one's out.
Okay. Where are you going?
Well, I was going to show you what it looks like.
Oh,
Oh, here.
like the wine setup back there.
Oh, we had a dinner party and that usually sits on the buffet, but we were using the buffet for food, so I had to transfer it. I'm in my pantry. Like I am within arm's distance of snacks in here.
That's dangerous.
It really is. Yeah, there's chips over there and
Ooh, that
all
is.
kinds of stuff over there. Right. Cereal. Oh, yeah. So anyway, so that's what happened. So I took the 60,000 words and had several content editors and we whittled it down to the best stories. And so then it came out, it's like 240 pages. So it's like 40,000 words of other people's atrocities and disasters.
What did you learn from other people's failures?
Well, I feel that it's very relatable. Like, even if I haven't done everything that people have failed doing, I feel like my thought process has been similar to theirs, where I almost got into that much trouble, but then I didn't. And so it's just very relatable that we're all human and we all make mistakes. And the best thing I like about the people that came forward is they were really able to laugh about it. It wasn't funny at the time. Nothing is funny at the time if you're getting out of a relationship or you're in a bad relationship or you get fired or not getting along with your family. None of it is funny at the time. But as years go by, I am of the thought that almost anything can be funny later. I mean, probably not death, but anything outside of that, you can find some humor in it later, and I think that's very healing. And I think it really helps other people. Like no one bonds over I have this and I have that and I have a lake house and I drive a BMW and I make a lot of money. Like that's very alienating and not warm. But if you are honest about some funny things in your life, I think people are drawn to you and that's what real relationships are made out of. I think is like the gritty stuff, the messy part of life is what makes you connect to another person.
Well, it's very apropos you say that because I just happened to see an interview with Michelle Obama talking about her new book, and
Mhm.
it was with I think it was Jimmy Fallon, and what she was saying is she's just like anybody else. Yeah, she made it to the White House, but in her book, she talks a lot about her own trials and tribulations. And as she said on Fallon, that the book is relatable. It doesn't matter that I happen to be married to the president. I
Mhm.
had struggles. She talked about how her and Barack went through marriage counseling. I mean, it's like you said, it doesn't matter. It's relatable, and
I
it
don't think any yeah, I agree with you. I don't think anyone is immune to the feelings that you have as a wife or a parent or being a boss or being an employee. I think regardless of how perfect people look on the outside, I think there's always a little bit of turmoil on the inside, and that could be for your own, drive and ambition. It could be for many reasons, but some of it's just human things. We get disappointed, we get our feelings hurt, we make a mistake. I totally agree with you. I don't think it matters how much money you have. It's not a social economic issue. It's like we're all human, and these stories are sweet, funny stories. They're not. I'm not trying to make light of somebody that has a drug addiction. I'm not trying to make light of somebody who dropped out of college or I'm not trying to make light of any of that, but I'm just saying kind of like this book is for people that most people have a pretty good life. They're getting by just fine and there's still a lot that goes wrong in your everyday life because that's what life is.
yeah, my I don't know if, I don't know how to call it. I don't know if I can call it a failure, but in my mind, it's a huge failure. I was in Canada a few weeks ago and I lost my wallet.
Oh my goodness.
Luckily, I have my passport, and so because of that, it's like a really bad pyramid scheme. I can't rent a car right now.
Right.
I'm legally not supposed to be driving. All these
Right.
little things, just because of a piece of plastic with my picture
Right.
on it. Uh, it's just amazing the power of little things such as your driver's license can affect your life. Um,
Right. And
with
it's like, and you said, and you know what, Thomas, you said the best thing. You go, I lost it. You know what I mean? You didn't blame it on anyone, even though somebody would, somebody could have stolen it. But like, I think what happens a lot is people don't take any responsibility,
oh
and they're just like,
yes,
this is happening to me. The world is out to get me. This is happening to me. And it's kind of like, yeah, stuff happens. And so you got to be like, okay, well, this happened. And what's step one? Now what are you going to do? You can wallow in it, or you can be like, what am I gonna do this next step?
oh it's and I hope the listeners hear that, because I'll take the fall on this one. When I went through my first divorce, I wallowed. I mean,
Sure. We
I
we all get a wallow period, for sure. Don't
six
you think?
months. I swear it was 6 months of wallowing, and
I think that's okay.
I
It's
see,
your story. If that's what you needed, then that's what you needed.
but I disagree, and here's why.
Okay, you wouldn't recommend that.
I would not recommend 6 months of wallowing. I would
Okay,
recommend, and I don't. It's the dad in me, Amy, going, well, suck it up, Buttercup. Well, the it's a traumatic experience. I mean,
sure.
people talk about the comparison of death versus divorce, and some say it's worse going through a divorce.
I
I
would
was
I would agree.
I was in self pity land, and
Sure.
unfortunately, as a man who who has gone through therapy at a very young age, I really wish I had um, spent more time in therapy after the divorce, because again, it was all due to just having that pity party of one, instead of regrouping, trying to ask for help. And this is why I love having you on, because you are very relatable when it comes to serving others, and the fact that in the first book you do talk about um, the mistakes, but also the ability to ask for help. And it's not a sign of weakness; it's always a sign of
Mm-mm.
strength.
Oh, I totally agree. I think it's um that's a good time to reach out. Like, what do I do now? I'm so sad. I mean, I can relate to that. When I got divorced, I cried in the bathtub. I don't know how many months. It was a long time.
Mhm.
And but I did seek, wise counsel about that. And what you and I went through, what everybody goes through when a relationship breaks up, is like it would be very unhealthy to not have a mourning period. Like, I mean, you probably know people like that. They just jump into another relationship and never really deal with the emotions or learn anything from it. And then that can be a disaster too. So
I,
um
I'm laughing because I've got a dear, dear close friend who um, I consider a brother, and he is going through a divorce right now, and he's already telling me the stories of, I don't know which app it is, because I mean, I'm like,
yeah,
you
there's a
married,
lot. Mhm.
but he's telling me there was one app where the and it's not even final. The divorce isn't even final, and
Right.
he found this woman who said, "I'm married, but we have an open relationship," and I'm like, well, "Dude, what are you doing?"
It's masking the pain, right? It's
Guys,
masking the pain. I know I'm not trying to push this on anyone at all. I just happen to be I'm a Christian, I just happen to be a Christian. And our message the other day was about happiness versus pleasure. What does that look like? And I think a lot of mistakes that people make sometimes are caught up in the pleasure part of things. And that could be spending money, it could be doing drugs, it could be sex, whatever, which all are pleasurable. but does that really lead to happiness? And and studies show like it really doesn't. That doesn't lead to happiness. Like really, if you looked at people, regardless of their social economic situation, what leads to happiness is usually an amount of serving others. That's an aspect. Contentment, gratitude, those things are listed there, and of course, peppered in there. You want to have pleasure in your life, but if you're only pursuing the pleasure, 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 normally those aren't very happy people. That's
Uh,
my that was the sermon, and I'm saying I kind of agree with that.
yeah. And this is coming from grapes too.
Oh, sure, and I understand the pain. You just want to hold on a second. Please hold.
Please stand by. I will now do a Christmas interlude. Jingle bell rock. That's all I know. Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer had a very shiny nose. And if you ever saw it, oh, thank goodness, Amy's back.
A little commercial break. We have a robot vacuum cleaner. I got it for Christmas last year, and it's called the Neato. It's a robot vacuum cleaner, and it was, I don't know if you could hear it. It was vacuuming. It was smashing against the door.
That's funny.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, and it turns on automatically, and so I didn't know it was going to be
Robots going.
well, it was rolling through there. I was like, oh my gosh.
So I want to segue because the part of the biggest reason I really wanted you back, and I'm so grateful that but I need to mention this, Amy Lyle, you are the first podcast guest to make a second appearance, even though technically it's your third appearance. Oh, we won't go there, but you are the first podcast guest to be on the show twice.
Well, that is the biggest compliment when people let me come back.
Well,
Can I come back to the show?
I want to reverse engineer and go, when I was thinking about having a end of year type show, I'm like, oh, Amy would be perfect. But will Amy really want to come back after my screw up from last time? And you showed up, so thank you.
2 minutes late, but I'm here, and I apologize.
Oh, you were 2. It was only 2.
2 minutes late. Okay.
Yeah. Who's counting? Come
Who's
on.
counting?
So the big reason I remember years ago watching Larry King.
Mm-hmm.
He had Tony Robbins on. It was again end of the year, and they're talking about the new year coming up, and I really wanted you on back on this podcast to talk about how can we not really look back at our failures, but how can we learn from our failures from the previous year and say, you know what, I got to move on. And one of the things that I'm struggling with in my little tiny head is that just because it's a new year doesn't necessarily mean it's a clean slate.
Right. Sure.
That a new year, yeah, it represents a new year, but you're still going to have the same issues. You're still going to have, you know, bill collectors calling you. You're still going to have to deal with the kids, be it your bonus kids, be it your blood kids. So Amy Lyle,
Yes.
your worldly wisdom, how can we move? Thank you. How can we move forward? Just, I mean, because I went through your book again, the first book.
Mm-hmm.
I've
It's a funny book. I want everyone to know it's a comedic book.
and there's things I want to talk about as far as relatable past.
Yes. Relatable fiascos.
Yeah.
Okay.
Question number 1: how can we move forward?
When you've made a mistake.
Yeah.
I think, well, it depends on what kind of mistake it is, right? So,
Let's say here, I'll give you a prime example.
okay.
So I'll use me as a guinea pig.
All right.
It's been an up and down year. God was very nice to me. Gave me finally back in June, got unfortunately a real job. But at the same time, I've taken so many steps back of building a media business.
Good.
And I beat myself up over it because I keep taking these steps back. So, Amy, how could you help me help you
Okay,
learn from
well,
learn from your
that story.
failure?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you finish your question? I'm so sorry.
No, I'm good. Just having some.
Okay. I can relate to that story because I'll give you an example, and you know this because it's in the book, the first book. So I wrote a screenplay. I worked very very hard on it. I had a mentor, and he was from Disney. He vetted films for Disney, and we worked on this movie for years. He had a real job, so he couldn't just when I made changes, he just couldn't read the changes and get the changes back to me. So it spread out over a course of years because he had a real job. And anyway, so when we were done, he's like, "You need an entertainment attorney to represent you for the screenplay. Call mine. You can call mine, and I'll call him, and I'll let him know you're calling." So I had a warm referral. So I'm so excited. I'm thrilled. And I call the attorney and he says, I know who you are. Rodney told me you're calling. You're nobody. You don't have any money and you don't know anyone. And I'm not going to represent you. And I was so crushed because this is something that I'd worked on and I knew it was a phenomenal piece of work because this mentor had worked with me. And I could have just like hung up the phone. I said, that makes me so sad. And I actually put an expletive in between that's so sad. But he started laughing. He goes, "Call me back tomorrow. I'm going to give you some free advice." I said, "Okay." So I called him back and he said, "Look, you can't just roll into Hollywood and not be searchable on the internet or whatever." He goes, "So this is my advice. You need to write a book and you need to go on a press tour. And when I search your name, Amy Lyle, better come up about something." And I was like, "What am I supposed to write about?" He said, "Write what you know." And he put an expletive in his sentence. And you know what? It hurt my feelings because I'd worked so hard. But the truth was, he was wise counsel. He'd been in the business for 30 years and he knew I couldn't do what I was trying to do. I'm not saying nobody could do it, but that was the advice he gave me. And so I could just quit. But instead of quitting, I'm like, I'm gonna write a book. And I wrote a book and I went on a tour for a year called my I shared my most mortifying moments and why you should too tour, and was able to get a lot of press. And a year later, within that year, the book became number one on Amazon in humor essays. And within the year, we got back together, and he's like, "I'll represent you now." And so now my film's going to be shot fall of 2019. So, and then in between that, when I was waiting, I wrote this other book. So it's like sometimes yes, you have a step back and it's like, what's the wise counsel to take the next step forward? Because we all have setbacks. Everybody has setbacks. I don't know anyone that just climbed the ladder seamlessly. They climb the ladder and then the company gets bought out and they don't have a job, or they climb the ladder and something happens. So my advice is to seek wise counsel, and it could be something that you did and you've made a mistake in some way, or you didn't know the process or procedure. Like I didn't know the process or procedure. I didn't know I had to get on the map before I could write a screenplay or sell a screenplay. So seek wise counsel and get a plan together, and that's really all you can do. Or you could give up, but like who wants to give up?
So, two questions. Number one, how did you find that mentor?
I was introduced to him through this is so weird. When I met him, he was like a partner, like a Ernest and Young, like a real high level consultant. And he was consulting with Coca-Cola here in Atlanta. He's in Utah and he was consulting with somebody in Atlanta. And one of my best friends, Margie, was on the project and they start talking about film, and she introduced me, and he graciously, when you say be a mentor, it's not like editing. I mean, he really poured his heart and soul, and he said he did it for me because somebody did it for him in UCLA film school. Somebody mentored him, and so he actually took me through like mini film school and everything. But anyway, that's how I found him. I was introduced to him through a mutual friend.
So, I think that's a very important point that you made, Amy. And I really want the listeners to understand that you can't do everything alone. You do need help. You do need mentorship. And the other piece is what you also said was you need a plan. So
Hmm.
what 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 does your plan look like? Is it And I know I'm probably going into the weeds, but I think it's so beneficial when people start looking back at um, their past failures because possibly they didn't have a plan. So what does Amy's plan look like? Is it, do you write down every morning, all right, 3 things I'm going to accomplish? Do you have um, calendars? And I'm laughing because all I keep thinking of Saturday Night Live when they were doing Brett Kavanaugh and all his calendars. And if you haven't seen it,
With every,
go to YouTube and it's hilarious. Matt Damon as Matt Kavanaugh is hilarious. But
oh my goodness.
what is your specific plan look like?
Well, my writing plan is I do try to write every single day. My kids are in high school and college, so I have a quiet house during the day, and so and I
Other
write for
than the robot.
yeah, and I don't have to vacuum because I have a little tiny robot. Just kidding. I have to vacuum a lot. We have 2 very large rescue dogs. But, so I try to write, every day, and then, I can't just write, spec stuff that I'm not getting paid for, so I also write for a blog. I also write for a local magazine, so, I have to do something for an income. I have to, manage, I my books are on Amazon, so I have to, you advertise on Amazon. So, I spend certain time every week managing that. But so that's what I do. I just try to write every single day. That's my plan. A relationship plan, like with my husband. To be frank with you, both of us, our church has like it's called a renew program, and you get assigned a mentor. And, we've been married for 8 years and we have 4 kids. And with that comes a lot of stress with 4 teenagers. And it's kind of like, how do we get back to us? You know what I mean? How do we, we're so crazy in love when we got married, and now it's like bills and kids and dogs and, all this stuff. And so we're really trying to work on that. And something that even just having teenagers that I've been exposed to that I love is like, be the person that you want this other person to be. And if you want a person to be gracious, you need to be gracious. If you want a person to be, giving, or, whatever you're wanting, like, are you doing that? And sometimes you get so caught up in any relationship where it's like, well, they didn't do this or they owe me this. And I'm so guilty of that too. I'm kind of a scorekeeper, and I realize that that's really not moving forward. And so I need to be the person to be forgiving. I need to be a loving person. I need to be a gracious person. I need to, all that stuff. So, um, I have a different plan, for my children. I was trying to micromanage them. That's not working. Now I'm kind of like, what's your plan and how can I help you get to your plan? Because their plan may not be the same as my plan. So, I'm a mess. So I have to have lots of plans.
Appreciate the honesty.
Yeah.
Doing all right. So how can we? I want to use your story from your first book, which
Okay.
I'm gonna screw it up, but is it Beingar?
Oh, the Amy Vinegar Chemist Lyle Book of Failures.
There we go.
They can look it up. Just look up Book of Failures. It'll come up. Yes.
Just search Amy Lyle.
Or search Amy Lyle. Yeah, I wanted it to scream, that woman has had a lot of problems.
Well, I know we all have a lot. Here's the thing. Here's the thing I love about the book. You call it a memoir, and I love
Mhm.
that because I don't know, when I go to like Barnes and Noble, or even when I'm on Amazon and I see memoirs, it's people that are almost dead. And I'm going, this is awesome, because now you have me thinking, because I'm still trying to get my third book published, and that's another story. But anyway, I want to you give people the right to do things that they don't think they can do, like write a memoir at such a younger age, um, and just take those opportunities. And I think that goes back to having a plan. And you know i I remember, I think it was Brian Tracy talks about how people have their every day they write down 10 things they're going to accomplish, and they accomplish 0.
Right?
And instead, write down 3 things, just 3 things, to help you move forward each and every day.
Mhm.
Because your 10 things become a not a to-do list, but a to do not list.
Right. And I mean, you've written it sounds like almost 3 books coming up, and it's a real process. I'll give you an example of it's not really a failure, it was just a challenge, like, it's kinda like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. So, I used the same content editor in my first book, and I really liked her, and I thought she made really funny suggestions, just even sometimes one word, adding it to a sentence makes it funnier, and I thought she did a great job. So, I invited her again to content edit the second book, and, she just didn't see things the way that I saw them. She sincerely like I have a story in there about a very, very fancy dinner party. A guy was trying to get a raise. He invited over the C-level executives from his company, and they had a dog. And the one of the executives is like, "Oh, I hear a dog. Let the dog come out." And he's like, "No, no, no. He's really rambunctious. Let's not bring him out." He's like, "Come on, I love dogs. Bring him out." So he brought him out, and the dog was behaving, but the dog was at the dinner table, and the executive's like, "Oh, he's got something hanging from his hiney." And so the mom, the wife grabs a paper towel, or a napkin off the thing. She starts to pull its pantyhose. It's like a magician's scarf. She is pulling and pulling and pulling, 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 pulling. And meanwhile, everybody's standing there. And it was so awkward and so weird. And then the wife is like, would you like dessert? And everyone's like, no, no, we don't, we don't want dessert. So I'm so sorry, I have a cough. But so they go home, and he eventually gets the promotion, but his boss razzes him about every time he hits. And the content editor's like, that could have killed the dog. And I was like, "What?" And she's like, "You could never pull something out of an animal's body. It could kill him." And I was like, "Oh, well, I didn't know that, but it didn't kill the dog. It's still a very funny story." And she's like, "That could have killed the dog." And I was like, "Well, you know what? I'll put a disclaimer." And I did. I was like, "Hey, never ever pull something out of your dog's bottom. You can go to a vet. It could hurt them. Like, I can put a disclaimer there for a safety thing because I didn't know that, but like it is a funny story." It Would you
It is.
agree? Yes, it is a funny story. So, so throughout the book, it was just like, or somebody went on a date that went very south, and the person's like, he's gonna murder me, and but they didn't get murdered. They didn't get murdered, and they got home and it worked out. And she's like, you can't put that in there. And so it was just like I really started to doubt myself. I'm like, oh my gosh, I think these stories are so funny. And she's just like, these people, these are horrible people, And and so I just agreed to disagree. And what I did is I went to 2 other content editors, and I said, no holds bar. What do you think? And it was so funny because it was almost opposite. The stories that they thought were hilarious, that woman hated, and the stories are kind of like, that's okay. That woman thought that were hilarious. And so, that was a very challenging time where I really doubted myself. And then I was just like, okay, well, what can I do about the situation is I got to move forward and seek, some other opinions on this. But anyway, to your point, like it's never just a straight up elevation. It's like you go up and then you go back 3 spots, and then you go up and you go back whatever. So you're just constantly trying to, especially in our business, when you're in media or you're a writer or whatever, it's rarely a straight upward arrow.
It's funny you say that because I went through my LinkedIn articles that I'd written throughout the year, and there was one that I really loved that I wrote. It was called "Stop Being a Secret." It
Mhm.
comes from I had a conversation with she's an amazing woman, and I'm drawing a blank, but she's an international speaker, and she was so kind to give me. It went from 15 minutes to 30 minutes of a conversation, and that was what she said. It said, your problem is you're a secret. You have done wonderful things. You have to give yourself permission to accept you've done wonderful things and let others know. And I'm like, yeah, but she goes, stop being a secret. So I actually re-edited the post to make it a little bit more um, uh, today now type, and nobody read it. And I'm like, that's okay. That's okay. I put out another post I had put out. It was like 2 years ago. I wrote it. It was called Five Things I Learned While Driving a Zamboni. And that,
Yeah.
and that one still, and I'm like, I mean, we're human, we're fickle. I get it. And when you do put content out there, when you put your writing out there, and it's one of those things where nobody reads it, or you just get slammed. I got slammed a couple years ago because I put a apostrophe in the wrong spot,
Oh, sure.
and I'm like, but what about the content message? And so it does hurt. It does hurt when you put something out there. It could be video. It could be you're doing a presentation at work and it bombs, but you feel you did really well.
Right.
And it's like, well, how do I overcome that? So how can people overcome some of those rejections, in your opinion?
Sure. I think okay, two things. Part one is, there's some beautiful works in people's drawers, right? You and I know it. There's some beautiful novels and poetry and screenplays that have never been taken out of the drawer, somebody, or never been printed or never been shared because somebody was so worried about what somebody else is going to think. And and then I am so fortunate. Like, I really viewed Amazon marketing as this science project that I had to figure out. I studied it. There's a lot of free material. Dave Chesson, Laura Peterson, they really take you through every single step of self-publishing, of how important your title is, your subtitle, your keywords when you put in there, advertising, all of that. Like, I really just studied it, and it's worked out well for me. But if you just even like there, I'm sure there's lots of books on Amazon that people self-publish that are phenomenal books, but nobody knows about them because they don't understand the world of Amazon advertising, or they don't, um, but you still have to know your work is good. Like, if you know your work is good in your heart, then you know your work is good. And so sometimes it's not appreciated. So you have to understand that, like, that's still an accomplishment. You wrote a poem, you wrote a song, you wrote a screenplay, you wrote a book. It's still an accomplishment that you went through that. So you need to give yourself credit for that. Um, and then, another part of that is you go through an immense amount of rejection, an immense with I never went the publisher route. I just self-published, so I didn't get the publishing rejection, but I got, like, I want to be featured in a magazine, or I'm reaching out to radio shows, I'm reaching out to television shows, I'm reaching out to bloggers, will you review my book? And for every yes that I get 10 no's. And I've had some good yeses, like, I'm on a television show all the time. I'm on a,
Right.
Atlanta company, like, I'm just a regular now. And that came from me sending them this funny email and some pictures and stuff. But to get that one yes, I went through 20 no's. So it's, you can't give up, that, especially if you're in a creative industry, that that's just it is somewhat of a numbers game, and you have to stay at it. And it's also like the definition of insanity, right? If you're never getting a yes ever, then maybe you need to work with someone and find out, is it my pitch? Is it my work? Like, is it the title? Is it this? Is it that? Is it that? You need to find out. Just like you said, hey, I tried to, modernize the name of this article, to get better results. Like, you weren't so blinded by, you're like, what else can I do to make this better? So I guess that's my advice for that. One, you have to know that you did a good thing by completing any work of creativity at all. You've done a good job, and know in your heart that is an accomplishment that 99% of the world will never do. And then two, in the process of getting out to the world, you're going to suffer a lot of rejection, and you just got to keep going.
I think you're, and this is again why I'm so honored that you came back on this podcast.
Thank you.
You're welcome. No, thank you. So here's what I have so far to help people move forward in not just the new year, but in general. Number one, mentorship. That is so huge. Number two, create a daily map, or a, I guess a business plan would be another way of looking at it.
Sure. And you can't get to everything, right? Every day you might not get to the three things, but did you get to one?
Yeah.
You got to one. So
Accept, and
celebrate the
accepting
win.
being okay with no. I remember somebody, I don't know who it was, but the famous no means next,
Right.
or no means not now.
Right.
I think those are three really good ways that people can take failures. And I also think, like you're talking about insanity. Well, insanity, in my opinion, also means, well, what did you learn? What did you learn from those failures? And if you're not learning, you're not growing.
Right. Oh, exactly. Yeah. So if you keep doing the same thing and you have no results at all, um, ask for help because it could be a really simple tweak. It could be.
All right, so I want to go back to the your memoir, the first book, and a few things that um, I I took notes. Um, and this one I want to start off with because it really pertains to a little bit of a situation I'm going through right now in our household, and it's stepmomming is super.
Effing hard.
Yeah. Um, and I wrote down rough patch
Sure.
because during that, I mean, obviously during that time of being a bonus parent, a step parent, you were going through a rough patch. What has transpired since the writing of that book into now with the bonus kids?
Well, the kids are older, now we have 2, that got out of high school that were in college, and that story is really based around when I first got remarried and we blended. I had one daughter that was 5 and my husband had 3 kids. One was like 8, one was maybe 11, and one was 12, and I was just, I had been a full-time corporate trainer and they needed tennis and they're driving them to football and one was doing dance and this and so my husband and I agreed like okay we'll all take some time off to really do full on mommy. My stepchildren lost their mom. They lost her to cancer, so there wasn't another mommy, there was just me. um and I just didn't handle that well. Um I didn't I that was not the best for me to let go of my career that I loved, and I didn't know how to handle it, and they're bickering all the time as teenagers do, and so the one thing that I did is start working just part-time. I started being a playwright for a big nonprofit, and to give me some balance because I felt like it's such a thankless job being a mom. Like, you're doing laundry and you're making meals and you're making lunches and, you're trying to discipline. And it's just no one ever says thank you. It's such a thankless position. You're just kind of, you're at odds with your spouse. My husband's working all day and I'm trying to, be hands on. And, so it was a very rough patch and a big growing time for all of us as a family to kind of like work out kind of like the rules and some consistencies and stuff like that. So it was a very rough, I would say, 2 years. And then now we're kind of on the back slope of that. I mean, we've been married for 8 years and the kids are getting older and frankly their decisions because everything we do as parents is to protect our children, right? And to
Right.
project them. That's what we're doing. That's what we're trying to do is protect them. And now, now that they're older, it's kind of like their decisions have no consequence to me whatsoever. And I don't mean that in a cold-hearted way. It's kind of like if you don't maintain a certain GPA, you're the doors are going to close for you on where you can go to school. And then if you go to school and you don't get a good GPA, the doors are going to close to you on where you work. And so that doesn't impact me. I'm just trying to help you understand the impact of your decision. So I think my husband and I both have kind of moved into more of a coaching role, and the cards are going to fall where they fall, but like they're going to get the consequence of that, the natural consequence of that.
So what was the big takeaway uh, the past 2 years? Where, not to say the relationships are, I mean, they are hard as bonus parents. I mean, like I said, I'm going through a little bit of struggle with our oldest. um, what takeaway has really helped you improve? I mean, even if it's just 1 degree with the with those relationships.
I would say get on the same page as your spouse, which is really hard for Peter and I because we discipline so differently. Our strategies are so different. Our intentions are the same, but our strategies are different. And so try to get on the same page with your spouse, and consistency, being consistent, and really try to pick your battles. Like every single thing is not important, and you can make everything important. You can say, well, I want you to load the dishwasher a certain way, and you're not, so you're being disrespectful and you're not listening to me. Like if you're going to pick on every single thing that your kids do, I think some of the big things get lost. So, I mean, and people can disagree with me. I'm kind of like an 80 percenter. I was like, okay, well, you're not allowed to go out for the weekend till your room is picked up. Now, how they pick up a room and how I pick up a room are very different. So I'm going to give them a little bit of grace, like, okay, he's 14. It's about 80%. That's pretty good. I might say, hey, get your laundry off the floor or whatever, but hey, your bathroom's clean or whatever. So I feel like picking your battles is really, really important. Everything cannot be important. Every single thing, you have to not battle over everything. Lying, stealing, drugs, cheating, grades. To me, that's character building, integrity. That's what's important to me. If your room is not 100%, I'm not going to lose any sleep over that.
What new aggravations do you have now after the book?
Like family wise or work wise?
Oh no, so you have things that aggravate me.
Oh,
So what new aggravation? So for example, you talk about I love this because God bless my dad because I really learned people skills from my dad.
hmm.
We'd be in a cab and my dad would ask the cab driver, "Where are you from? What do you like to do?" Or the one that's funny is you talk about calling the waiter or waitresses by their first name,
Yeah, I don't like that.
and I do it all the time. But to your point, you talk about
A grown up can do that, but I don't like my kids doing that. Like, hey, Barbara, give me some more Coke. I'm like, oh my goodness, don't say that.
yeah. So what new aggravations do you have now?
I would say my newest aggravation is not with my immediate family. It's with somebody within our family that, you have that person that's like they're headed for the train. The train is coming and they just keep walking on the tracks. They just keep walking on the tracks. And your intentions in your heart is to help them and make their life better. And they have issues of self-control, they have issues with honesty, they have a lot of issues. And you're trying to say there's a better way for you. Let me show you a better way. There's a better plan for you. Like this cannot be leading to happiness, all this stuff that you're doing. And they won't listen and they just keep making the same mistakes over and over and over. And it's really heartbreaking. It makes me sad.
But don't you feel that it's going to have to be at their moment, at their time, that they're going to realize, hey, I should jump on the train instead of jumping on the tracks?
Yeah, especially when everybody else is funding them 100%. So they're on other people's dime
Ah,
and then they want to, you know, be the way they are. And it's like, well, you can make that decision, but we're not going to fund that. And to get pushback, it's like, you want to live your life the way you want to live it, do it, but you're on our dime right now. So we have a few ground rules, you know?
oh,
I mean, I would still be sad if this person was on their own dime because I feel sad, like, oh, your life could be so much more enriched, your relationships could be so much more enriched, your job could be so much better if you took a few minor steps. But hey, you're paying your way, it's fine. But when everybody else is financing them, um, that gets immensely frustrating.
what uh, what have between your writing and your acting,
Hmm.
what has something come out of that that you did not expect?
Well, I never dreamed to be an actress. I'm an actor at my church. It's so fun. I'm Moses, or, last week I was a donkey in the story of the Christian, the Christmas story. I was a donkey. You're in the barn with the donkeys, and no room at the end. I got to scream as a donkey. But anyway, um, so from that and doing a book tour, I got picked up to be in a movie short called The Interviewers with this filmmaker, Sam Jurgens. And he just saw me on a show. He reached out to me on Facebook. We live in the same community, and he saw me on a television show. And he's like, "Hey, would you be interested in doing this movie short? It's under 15 minutes, called The Interviewers." And by the way, congratulations to Sam Jurgens, because it just won Best Comedy at the Franklin Independent Film Festival.
Congratulations.
I know, so exciting for him. So anyway, when talking to him, like, I was just an actor in it, but everybody's hanging out and doing everything that you do in a film. There's a lot of downtime, and he found out that I was a screenwriter, not just a writer. And he's like, "Can I please read your screenplay?" And I said, "Sure." And so he said, "Oh my gosh, I love your style, love your dialogue. Can we work on some stuff in the new year?" And so we're going to work on a pilot and then a full feature film together. And so that was I never dreamed in a million years I would get an acting job. I never dreamed in a million years that I would get a screenplay deal. I can't believe I've written 2 books. It's just like, small steps, like we were talking about earlier. Like, if you just start writing every day, even if you only do 500 words, I try to do 1,000 words a day, but even if you only do 100 words a day, imagine if you did that every single day or 5 days a week. Like, eventually you would have your story, and everybody should have their story. So I guess my message in that is, like, find something you love, and even if you can only do it on a small capacity, find something that brings you great joy and do it a little bit every day.
You
And then who knows what's gonna come out of it, right? Like, I've had some really fun things, transpire because of it, which I never dreamed of.
I think that's such an important point of, it goes back to, people go, well, it's a new year, you know, especially if you own a gym, that's a gold mine. That's the
Oh,
beginning of the year. That's when you're selling all those memberships, and by February, nobody's coming in because they're not willing to take those small steps. They're not willing to, like you were saying, write 100 words. They think that, oh my gosh, I got to get out of bed. I got to go to the gym. You don't necessarily have to. You can just go outside and go for a walk. Um,
right, it's daunting if you look at the end. It's kinda daunting, like, I have to come up with 50,000 words, like, that's a lot of words. But yeah, just if you enjoy it, do a little bit at a time, y and you'll get to it.
yeah. And, it was really funny. My wife and I we were driving to my son's hockey game, and we were listening to John Tesh.
Mhm.
He was talking about how if you own a dog, you're healthier
Right.
because you should be not just let them out in the backyard and let them do their business. You should be walking them and enjoying the moment. And I was thinking, well, unfortunately, our chocolate lab, he can't do that anymore. But at
Aw.
the same time, it really gave me a thought going, well, I need to take those small steps again. I need to, learn from my failures of not doing those little things. It's taking the time to say, all right, what's not working? Okay. Well, what can I do to improve on a small scale? And one of the things I did a couple weeks ago was I miss I miss having the ability to write more,
Sure.
and I needed an outlet. So I went back to um, the Good Men Project, who I used to do a column for, and I just got overwhelmed. And personally, I didn't feel that my writing was improving. And so I went back to them. I said, "Would you be willing to let me write for you guys again and bring my column back?" Like, yeah, come on back. So super excited about saying to myself, it doesn't matter. I think that's where, especially creative people such as yourself, Amy, and others that are listening, is that as creatives, we feel that, and I'll use writing as the example, that if I write something, everybody's going to read it.
right? Or
Not
it's
the
gonna be
case.
on the New York Times best-selling list,
Yeah. And if
right?
you write for yourself,
Mhm.
that's good enough.
Yeah, and, to your point, if my goal was to write a New York Times best-selling book, I need to sell 9,999 books in the first week of release or whatever the rules are. I would have been so devastated. I was so excited to have a number one best-selling book on Amazon. My book was ahead of Trevor Noah. I was so excited. My second book released. It's the number one new release in two categories. My first book stayed in the top 100 best-selling list, for 18, 19 months now. Like that to me is a huge win. Like when someone writes a review and says, "Oh my gosh, I read your book and it made me feel better about my life. I read your book and I realized I'm not so crazy. I'm not so weird. My life is not such a mess." I read it and I realized, gosh, everybody struggles with being a stepmom. Everybody struggles sometimes in their relationships. Everybody struggles sometimes with what am I supposed to do with my life? Everybody struggles with that. And, in this world of like filtered social media, everything's perfect. These 24-year-olds are being millionaires from doing Instagram or whatever they're doing. That's really not real life. And if that's what it takes to make you happy, um, you may have a long, sad journey to get there. I mean, maybe you'll get there, but try to enjoy the journey along the way. You wrote an article. That's amazing. You wrote today. Again, you're 99% ahead of most people that never sit down and do it or, take, you know, guitar lessons or piano, or whatever it is, or paint or whatever, just by investing in yourself and doing something every day. Or maybe it's parenting. Like, I'm not going to yell at my child. I'm going to say, let me think about this for a few seconds before I answer you, and changing the dynamics between you and your child with exercising some self-control. You know what I mean? Like it could be anything. It could be, like you said, it could be food, or I don't want to join a gym, but I'm going to walk around the block 3 times today, and tomorrow I'm going to try to do it 4. I think life is a bunch of very small, made up of incremental decisions day by day.
I think that's beautiful. I mean, I really do, and I really do hope people listen to that and say, I I can do this. I might, like we talked earlier, marriages have failed, relationships fail. Um, maybe my bonus kids aren't talking to me, but at least I'm in their life. Little things like that, and I really think you nailed it right there with that soliloquy that you just gave, because it's awesome.
My girlfriend, I'll share this with you really fast. This is so beautiful. You'll love this. So I go to this party in my neighborhood. It's called your 3 favorite things party. 3 favorite things. So let's say your favorite thing is a book. So you buy 3 of them and then you come home with 3 different things, right? You come home with Bob's one favorite thing and Sarah's favorite thing, whatever. That's the
Okay.
party.
Yeah.
So you go with 3 of the same thing, you come back with 3 different. So anyway, so I got, you draw a name out of a hat or whatever. So I got my girlfriend Shannon's present, and it was this little basket, and in the basket it had um tea, like a ginger tea bag. It had a beautiful little coffee mug. It had real ginger that like you grate.
Mhm.
It had a little tiny candle, and it had a little tiny gratitude book. And then she hand wrote this note that said morning, oh, and it had a lemon. And she hand wrote this note that said, your morning ritual, heat up your tea, ground the front, and write, one page of this gratitude book. And the book gives you, helps. You don't have to just come up with it. It asks you certain very specific questions to help you. And the question that I had flipped to was something about my home. And there I was with my tea, and it smelled so good. It was, and it was just, it had my little candle on, and her beautiful basket. And it was about my home, and I looked around, and like my dogs are at my feet, and my house was clean because I just cleaned it because we were having family in town. My house was really clean. It smelled good. And we had like the kids help me decorate Christmas. And so I'm so sorry, my voice going out, but our house looks so fun, and like all these little elves and gnomes and the little popsicle, Christmas ornaments that they've had through over the years were, all around the house. And I just wrote all those down, which I know seems so silly, but like I was so grateful to have those popsicle stick, ornaments. And I was so grateful to have this hot cup of tea. And I was so grateful to have my sweet dogs, at my feet. I was kind of, petting them with my feet. And it was like a small thing, but oh my gosh, what an impact it had on my day. And just taking a couple moments for yourself to think about what you're thankful for. And I wrote Shannon this sweet, long text message of how it impacted my day so much that just to slow down and I've got to do this. I got to wrap this. I've got to buy presents. Christmas is coming up. And instead of doing that, just enjoying 10 minutes. And it was, I don't know, it was just like such a cool present, such an amazing gift to give someone,
I think that's a great way to just end how you can go back from failures. And again, even though it's a new year, that every day is a new day. Every day is a new opportunity. Every day is a new present to be above ground. And I think that was the cherry on the sundae was gratitude, Amy.
Yeah, and the holidays are hard, aren't they? The holidays are hard and lonely, and people have losses, and they are hard. So, don't put too much pressure on yourself. Enjoy whatever it is in your life that is beautiful, because it's a hard time. And maybe smile at one more person in the grocery store. You may be the only person that smiles at them all day.
Amy Lyle,
Yes,
two repeat champion. I'm blending the family. How can the listeners find Amy Lyle?
I was celebrating my two appearances. They can find me on www.amylyle. Lyle is LYLE.me. And the books are found on Amazon. We're All a Mess, It's Okay, and The Book of Failures by Amy Lyle. And my Instagram is author Amy Lyle, and my Facebook page is amylyle.me.
I'm so grateful, Amy, that you came back on, and I'm so appreciative of your humor, of your honesty. I'm your biggest fan, Amy.
You're so sweet. Well, thank you for having me. And I hope that if one person is moved by our talk and it encourages them to move in the right direction or feel better about themselves, then that's what it's all about, right? Just it's all about helping other people. So I
I
hope
agree.
that warmed their heart in some way.
Thank you for listening to Blending the Family. We hope this was time well spent while walking your dog.